Hey everyone, it's time to do this thing. It's been about a month since the last Q&A, a little less, but I want to do these regularly. I think we promised 2 a month, and haven't exactly been living up to that. We've got a lot going on with work and whatnot, and then with Whit moving away and not having time to come work here, things have changed a little bit. So anyway, we're making do. We're gonna make this work somehow. Still very hopeful that Whit's still gonna be involved in the channel. However, she just moved into her new apartment a handful of days ago and doesn't have her furniture yet, and it's not settled. So it's probably still going to be a little bit before we can get her back on the channel. So anyway, but thanks everyone for joining. Be taking questions here for about the next hour or so, anything related to video production. I will answer any questions that I can. You can leave those in the chat. Depending on how your screen's laid out, might be below, might be over to the right of the video window. But feel free to leave questions there, and people have already left some questions there in that already. So with that said, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. So, Micah, how many events have you had with the COVID lockdown? More or less than before? It's kind of been up and down, to be honest. We've had some very busy months. September was a very busy month. November's been a pretty busy month. October was dead. I didn't have hardly anything in October. So, I mean, it's really all over the place. And overall, I think 2019 we had a lot fewer events than we've had in 2020. But 2018, I think we had more. So, depending on what year to compare to, you could say it's either more or less, either way. Certainly done more virtual events. I've done a few with Whit here, and then I've been involved with another company in Salt Lake, Vega Media Studios, and then Market Vision Media. I've been helping them out with doing some live events, and did one of those just a week ago, and we're doing another one here in a couple of weeks. And so anyway, so with COVID, things have been different. I'll just say that. We've certainly done more single camera events than we ever did before, where it's just camera and a live streaming device on location. Multi-cameras don't necessarily make sense when you don't have a big group of people in a conference room or whatever. So anyway, but yeah, we've been doing probably more events definitely more events than last year, and maybe more than years past. Definitely not in 2018. 2018 was very busy, at least the first 2/3 of the year. We were doing events almost every week for a lot of 2018. 2019 was pretty slow, and 2020 has been considerably busier. Again, record month in September. November is a record month in terms of revenue, but not a record month in terms of number of events. So anyway, yeah, it just comes and goes. Can't necessarily predict it. The other thing that's been really weird about 2020 is we don't plan as many events as far ahead of time as we have in the past. So a lot of the events that we've had, we find out about a week ahead of time, maybe 2 weeks. The biggest event we had this year, a concert. Actually, that may not be the biggest one anymore. We had a big concert in September and got that job a week before the event happened. So not a lot of time to plan. So. All right, I wish I knew how to say your name here, but I'm interested in whether the Benenfell 521-0116, which includes XLR in and out, mic preamps, would be worth trying for small form factor needs. Go watch the video I have on this channel about a review I did of another Benenfellows unit. That one turned out to be a little bit problematic. If you do get that one, I would say make sure you buy it from somewhere that has a good return policy, because they seem to be hit and miss and not necessarily 100% reliable. Just to summarize what happened with the other one, it was dropping the network connection. Oddly enough, since I did that review, it's been considerably more reliable, and I actually have been using it here in the trailer as part of my intercom system. And that's the way that when we go into a venue that already has Dante, that's the way they connect into our intercom, is through that device. So, and that's worked okay. I don't know what was going on with it earlier on, but since the review, it's been much more reliable. So again, just buy it from somewhere that has a good return policy. Okay, Micah, for someone with only 5 or less inputs and fixed monitor outputs, would you recommend a video matrix hub? That really depends on how you need to move your signals around. Now, I really like video hubs because, well, first of all, you don't have to patch cables anymore. It makes it really easy to route out a signal from A to B. But the other nice thing that they do is they allow you to distribute a signal. So if you want to take a camera and send it to an input on your switcher as well as a recorder, you can do that very easily. You just patch that input into 2 separate outputs, and it makes it really easy to distribute a signal. You can have one input go to all your outputs if you want. So that's one of the great things about those. I don't build a video system without one, with very limited exceptions. My small portable rig that I use for super small events, I don't have one in there because it doesn't make any sense. I don't need to distribute those signals anywhere, and in the case that I do, the switcher has an auxiliary output on it, and so I'm able to use that to send signals somewhere else. So really up to you. And decide whether it's something that would make sense in your workflow. I think anytime you've got more than 8-ish outputs or inputs, then it makes awful lot of sense, and something you probably ought to do. Okay, all right. Again, I don't know how to say your username. Is the Yamaha 1608 Dante I/O box you use usable without the TF3 mixer? For example, able to control gain, channel gain, fandom, etc. Yes. I saw this question before. I started the live thing, so I actually got my 1608, or one of my 1608s out. So there's the unit. So it's got the 16 inputs and 8 outputs, and then got your Dante on the rear, so your Ethernet cable there. And this is actually hooked into my TF3 right now, but you don't have to have a TF3. There's a piece of software that Yamaha makes available for free. It's called R Remote, and let's see, I switched to the wrong video source here. Why even have this one on here? Let me see. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so this is R Remote. This is, again, free from Yamaha. And this does allow you to control those TOs and also their Rio series as well. And with this, you can set the preamps, set the gain, turn the high-pass filter on and off. And you can do all that remotely. So, yeah, so basically you can use the TO or the Rio series with any Dante device from any manufacturer. It doesn't have to be one of the TF mixers. Interestingly enough, for those that have a QL or a CL series, they added support for the TO series, TO 1608, in firmware, one of the later firmware versions. So if you happen to have one of those high-end mixers, you actually can use and control this TO unit from those higher-end mixers. So a nice little benefit that they've added there. Alright, okay. Tell you what, guys, this is kind of weird to be doing this by myself. I got used to having Whit doing the questions and whatnot. Okay, let's see. I'm looking at purchasing the Blackmagic ATEM Television Studio Pro HD. Do you know if the SDI output carries the live feed, and if it's 1080p 60, what is the aux program and outputs? Outputs used for. Okay, so you can select the video format on the Television Studio Pro HD. You can set it to any 1080 format, so 1080, 23, 24, 25, 50 or 60 frames per second. It also does 1080i as well. So you select that, and then yeah, you choose what format you want the switcher to actually operate in. That switcher does not have scalers on the inputs, so all your video sources have to match the same format as the switcher is running. So, you know, if you're running 1080p 60, all your cameras and other video sources have to be 1080p 60 as well. So the aux on that is just an auxiliary output that you can select any. You can use any of the video sources that are inside the switcher. That can be any of the cameras. It can be preview, program, one of the keys, clean feed. You can send any of those to the auxiliary SDI output. You can do program. So if you wanted to have, but that switcher also has program outputs for each of the SDI to correspond to each of the SDI inputs. So it has inputs, SDI inputs 5, 6, 7, 8, and then those also have SDI outputs, and those can carry program or program with what they call mix minus audio, which is where it excludes the audio from that same channel. So audio output or SDI output 5. If you turn on mix minus feature, it doesn't have audio from channel 5 on the SDI input. That's useful for things like Skype calls and whatnot, and when you want to exclude their own audio from the audio that's going back. So yeah. All right, Ike, can you share your thoughts on the Bird Dog encoders, budget production over Ethernet instead of fiber? This goes back to my feelings about NDI, because the Bird Dog encoders are using NDI in order to get video out to switcher. So basically, if you already have a switcher that uses NDI, so if you're using like one of the new tech TriCasters, or you're using like Vmix, something like that, then NDI can make a lot of sense. If you're not, if you're using a switcher that doesn't have NDI built in, then I don't think it makes much sense, because the cost to convert a signal to NDI both directions is way more than going fiber. In fact, converting one direction is actually more than going fiber. Fiber converters are not that expensive. The fiber cables are less expensive than Ethernet, and so if you're looking to save money, fiber is actually cheaper than going with the Bird Dog encoders, and you're getting a higher quality signal because it's not going through any sort of compression. It's just native SDI coming through. So yeah, but if you have a switcher that has NDI, then it can make sense to use one of the Bird Dog encoders in order to get your video into your switcher. So Danny asking, researching tentacle sync, any experience? Not personally. I've been on a number of sets where they've used them, and the guys rave about them. I think they're absolutely awesome. And next time I need to have a SMPTE timecode signal in camera, I'm considering getting some tentacle syncs. The other thing I'm also looking at doing is maybe just using a wireless in-ear monitor system, distributing the timecode audio coming out of my switcher over IEM wireless system, and then using the body packs to go into input on a camera. So that's actually a cheaper route. The tentacle syncs are relatively affordable, but they're more expensive than getting a cheap IEM system. Amazon's got a ton of IEM systems that work well enough that are just a few $100s. Like I was looking at one the other day, it's under $300 for four channels, 4 receivers. So something like that could work for that pretty well. So because timecode is just audio, it's just line level audio, and if any sort of wireless audio system can work. If you're okay with running cables, just run XLR cables from a distribution amp. So yeah. So we've got a new member on the channel. Awesome. Thank you, Felipe. That's awesome. This member program is turning out better than I ever expected. Very happy about that. And we will be doing better about fulfilling our promises on that. We're waiting for Whit to get settled in her new place before we can really dive in and get that going. Okay, Amari, I'm looking at buying an audio mixer, and it looks like from my research that Dante is the checkbox I definitely need. Dante is awesome. Dante is amazing. It has totally changed the way that I work, and I highly recommend it for anybody who's considering it. I'm really diving in even deeper with Dante, and you guys will know what that means here in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be doing a video on a Dante-based project that I'm working on right now, and I'm also going to be doing kind of a introductory course for Dante before too long as well. Dante is just awesome, and something that I highly recommend for anybody who can actually incorporate that in their workflow. Looks like we had a follow-up question on that as well. Looking at the Behringer X32, X32 mixers, they appear to be the most bang for the buck. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the X32s do offer a lot of bang for the buck. I just ordered an X32 rack, which will be arriving tomorrow, and I got the Dante card option for it as well. That's part of the project that I'm going to be doing here on the channel here before too long. So that allows you 32 ins, 32 outs over Dante. And if you guys, let you in on a little not very well known secret if you're in the US, actually probably if you're not in the US too, a lot of those Behringer products are available for really cheap if you get them from Thomann out of Germany, even shipping to the US. So my X32 rack and the Dante card, both combined with shipping, cost me just $1,200, and that's normally what the mixer costs by itself. So go take a look at Thomann. That's THOMANN.com, and you can get those things pretty cheap. And they always have them in stock, unlike a lot of the U.S. distributors. So if you're looking to save a few bucks and get that equipment, Behringer stuff is ultra cheap there. There's a lot of other products that are really cheap there as well. I was looking at some Gator cases, and they're like half the price that they are here in the U.S. So, okay. Let's see, Jonathan, where's the best place to buy a jib crane looking for 25 feet plus, preferably telescopic? How much should I expect to pay? If you're talking telescopic, you're talking a lot of money. Those things are ultra expensive. But in terms of something shorter, Easy Jib makes some pretty good products that are pretty affordable. That we've used those a lot on productions. If you want something higher end, trying to remember the name of the company. I've got a buddy who works for a company that builds jibs. Trying to remember the name of it off the top of my head. It'll come to me at some point. Anyway, they build amazing jibs, and the guy that I know, he is the best jib operator in all of Utah, and he swears by him. So it'll come to me. I just can't remember off the top of my head what that is. Okay, Felipe, I'm looking at purchasing the Blackmagic ATEM. Wait a minute, we already saw that one. Okay, let's skip that one. Okay, Spencer answering a question. So the X32 Dante comes with Dante native. No, it's X32 comes with Dante natively, so you have to include the add-on card in order to add Dante. And also, I should mention that compared to some of the other options, it's limited in number of channels. That one only does 32 in, 32 out, whereas the card that I use with my Yamaha TF3 does 64 channels in and out. So, yeah. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so the X32 plus Dante card ends up being less expensive than a lot of other options. Yes, that's definitely my So like I said, my X32 rack that I ordered, plus the X Dante card for it, was less than buying, or way less than buying a mixer that supports any other mixer that supports Dante. So yeah, definitely the best bang for the buck there. Okay. Okay, hey, when is coming Aaron, and live stream also hi Curtis Judd. So I haven't talked with Aaron since the last one. He does his live streams on Sunday morning when I have some church related stuff going on. I live stream for some church meetings every Sunday, and when he's doing his live stream, that's when I'm doing this other stuff. And so I would not be able to be on his channel when he does his normal live stream, although I can incorporate him into pretty much any of mine. I'm gonna have to reach out to him. I want to do something with him, and I also want to do something with John Barker over here to record. Kind of the trifecta of people that are doing live streaming type channels here on YouTube. So, all right, okay, yeah. So I mentioned you guys were answering questions before I even had a chance to go live, so it's kind of razzing everybody about that. So let's see. Almanox, how's the instant replay progressing? I haven't done anything with it, but I did have an opportunity where I could have used it at the beginning of November, so I helped out another company to do live streaming of a volleyball tournament, and this took place here in northern Utah. There's going to be a behind-the-scenes video coming for members of the channel here pretty quick. I did some pretty extensive behind-the-scenes on that one. But we did a volleyball tournament, and we had 7 cameras on that one, 5 camera operators, and instant replay would have been really nice on that one. But I ended up getting that gig like the day before it happened. I was hired as a camera operator, and then the day before it happened, the guy called me and said, hey, can we use your trailer? And so I didn't have any time to do any preparation, so we missed out on the instant replay for that. But yeah, so you have to be a little bit patient with me. My monitor over here is flickering. It seems like, I don't know why it is, it only does this during live streams, but the monitors start flickering just during the live streams. So hey Doug, I run a very small sports production. How many hours before going live should we be fully set up? Well, as many as possible. Yeah, and you want to have time to test everything thoroughly. So I would give yourself however much time it takes to set up, plus at least 2 hours at a very minimum. More would be better. Because you just never know what kind of curveballs are going to come. The live stream may not work properly. Someone may give you a last-minute request. There's always something that comes up last minute. So it's better to just have everything working hours before, when I have really important productions, I like to set up and test everything the day before, whenever the client is okay with paying for that extra day or half day or whatever. Just because you really want to have everything thoroughly tested and know everything's going to work well before the event starts. You don't want to be dealing with last-minute problems as the event is actually starting. So I'd say, if it takes you 3 hours to set up, then show up at least 5 hours before the event starts, and that gives you setup time plus time to thoroughly test. So, all right, Ben, would you show how you do Zoom Skype events? I did a behind the scenes for a couple of one of our big virtual events that we did a little while ago. So that's a video that's available to members on the channel. So that'd be a good place to start. You can get that. Actually, I think you do have to have the $10 subscription. But if you don't want to pay an ongoing fee, you can just do the $10 subscription and then cancel it later to get that. But I don't want to redo a video I've already done, because I've actually already done a video on how to do the Zoom and Skype events. So and there's a lot of people that talk about that on YouTube as well. So. Alrighty. Yeah, Benny basically saying the same thing. At least 2 hours. Give yourself at least 2 hours after setup before the event starts. So, all right. Could you send your intercom audio to your live stream? And if so, why would you want to do that? Would there ever be a need? You certainly could. I wouldn't necessarily do that unless. I mean, that's something that we could do here on this channel, especially for the subscribers, the members that are on here, to see what goes on behind the scenes. And I have in the past, I haven't done it for a while, but I used to actually record the multi-view along with the intercom audio for new directors to review their performance. And there was a time or two I actually included that in a live stream back when this channel was still pretty new. Some of those videos, actually I think all those videos I've hidden at this point, but I hate to keep saying this, but I've made a handful of those available to members, paying members on the channel as well, and I will open up more of those as well. But basically, the only reason you'd want to do it is for people like us that want to see the behind the scenes that are going on. I was watching a live stream the other day called Office Hours, something Alex Lindsay put together. They talk about video production related things, and they were talking about how they actually did intentionally include intercom audio in the pre-show before an event went live once, and the people watching just absolutely went crazy. And I thought that was the kind of the neatest thing ever. And another time they actually staged some behind the scenes stuff. They took the intercom audio, included it in the program audio before an event, and they actually staged some fake problems just to make it more interesting. So something you could do. It's actually not too hard to do. Yeah. Okay, Sandeep, can you use two ATEM minis together to make one 8-input 2ME switcher? You couldn't do 8 because you have to have the output of one of the switchers going into the input of the other. So you're losing one input there. So you're talking about a maximum of 7. And that becomes awkward like when you're using one of the video sources that's on the cascaded switcher, because like you have to select camera 2 here and then input 4 over here, and it becomes much more confusing. So you can do it, although I wouldn't really recommend it. If you're thinking about doing that, you probably just ought to step up to a switcher that has 8 inputs, like the Television Studio HD. That one has 4 HDMI, 4 SDI, and you can do 8 sources on that one, and that is less than buying 2 ATEM Mini Pros, or roughly the same price as buying an ATEM Mini and an ATEM Mini Pro. So yeah, I don't think I would go that way unless you don't really have any other choice. And that wouldn't really make it a 2ME switcher. That would just give you more inputs. So yeah, not something that I would necessarily recommend, but in a pinch you could do that if you needed to add additional inputs. So, would you use only X90 to do small events? I wouldn't have a problem with that, actually. So X90 is a great camera. It has a very similar image compared to this Z150 that I'm shooting on here now. It's more or less the same camera as far as the internals go. And I've used these Z150s a ton of times. I've used my X70. I actually haven't used my Z90 for an event yet. I've only had it a couple of months now. And I haven't done an event where I needed to add more cameras than I had. But anyway, I would have no hesitation including the Z90 in an event. It's a great camera. So, Doug, what is the encoding software you use to stream videos? Are you going to are you using an available one, or have you written your own? So I actually do streaming through hardware. So I'm using, for this stream, I'm using the Teradek Video Go, and that's become my preferred one. I've had that one for a little less than a year, and it's worked out great. Although the latest firmware is a little buggy when it comes to handling audio over HDMI. So again, make sure if you're using that, test it ahead of time. A lot of people that watch this channel, a lot of people I talk to in the industry absolutely love the LiveView Solo. That's also a great product. That one almost requires a subscription, monthly subscription, to make it work right. There's a way around it, but it's kind of awkward. The Teradek units you can use without a subscription, no problem. You actually have to jump through some sign-ups and stuff like in order to use a subscription, whereas the LiveView, they really push you into that. But both can work really well. I avoid using the software-based solutions because it's actually more expensive. You're tying up a computer that you can't really use for anything else. You're increasing the likelihood that something's going to go wrong. You know, some update starts happening in the middle of doing a live stream, or the software crashes, or any number of things. I find that the hardware units are way more reliable, and in the long term actually cost less because you're not tying up a computer on it. So yeah, I wish my monitor wasn't flickering. That's making it hard to read the questions. Alright, another related question to setting up ahead of time. If we have all the equipment set up the day beforehand, how many hours before going live should we get there? I've kind of standardized on 2 hours for the more important events, and then 1 hour for ones that are far less complicated, where there's fewer things that can go wrong. So yeah, 1 to 2 hours is kind of a good place to start if everything's already ready to go. Okay, Curtis Brooks asking, what are your thoughts on SRT and do you use it? I have not used SRT, so for those who don't know, SRT is Secure Reliable Transport. It's a way of sending video with very low latency over the internet, among other things, but that's the primary use for it. I have not used it myself yet. I've talked to quite a few people who have, and they really like it. So it's something that I'm very seriously considering adding to my setup. If you're familiar with Blackmagic products, something that's very similar, although it's not the same, it doesn't use SRT, is having video go from an ATEM Mini Pro or Pro ISO to the streaming bridge. So send video from one location to another, and SRT is the protocol that's used to do that. And there's equipment and software to handle that. There's a lot of people that are doing that now, and it's more reliable than RTMP, higher quality than RTMP, so it's a good option. I have not personally used it yet, mainly because the only times I've needed to do remote video, it would just be a hassle to try and get SRT set up. So we use Zoom, just because everybody's familiar with it. Everybody knows how to use it. And so, yeah, and it's also very low latency as well. So Zoom has been my go-to for bringing in remote video feeds. So I have not had an occasion to use SRT. I should probably make more of an effort to do something with SRT here on the channel. So, yeah. Okay, going back to the timecode. Omar asking if wireless introduces a delay. Doesn't that defeat the purpose of timecode? If you're using an analog-based wireless in-ear monitor system, it doesn't add any delay whatsoever. The only wireless systems that add delay are the ones that are digital. And for audio, the delay, well, there's hardly any IEMs that are digital. But any delay that's added for wireless audio is insignificant, especially for timecode. Timecode is only accurate to 1 frame anyway, so as long as your delay is much less than 1 frame, you're fine. So, okay, again, another question from Benny. How many hours before going live are you actually set and ready to go? Like I said, again, I try to be ready 2 hours ahead of time. Can't always do it, but that's the ideal. So, Miguel asking, are you using NDI? I do not, mostly because I do not have a switcher that uses NDI. I use the Blackmagic ATEM Production Studio 4K, the 2ME version of it is my switcher, and it does not support NDI. And so it wouldn't make a lot of sense for me. Trying to incorporate NDI into a switcher that doesn't have it is very cost prohibitive. So the converters to go from NDI to SDI are like $700. So yeah, the fiber stuff is way cheaper. You know, a fiber converter from Blackmagic is $155. Then you add an SFP, about another $90. So you're talking $250 on each end. So $500 total in order to go from SDI to fiber back to SDI. And that's far less money than NDI encoders. And you can go as far as you want. You know, these things are rated in miles in terms of distance of the cable. And the cable is much cheaper. So the fiber cable that I use is about $1 per meter. So I get a 100-meter cable for $100. You can't even come close to that when you're talking about SDI, because in most cases you're talking about bidirectional. You have video from camera and return program going back to camera. So you're talking about two cables. NDI can do that. I don't know if there's any implementations that are really doing that yet. It's technically capable. The other problem is NDI can swamp a network pretty quickly. I think for decent quality, if you have more than 8 cameras going over a gigabit, you're going to overwhelm it. So, you know, it's very common that we run more than that. So we just use fiber for everything. It's cheaper. It's more reliable. Get more distance. It's just a better way to go, in my opinion. So NDI has its place. NDI is great with like a PTZ camera. So you run one cable that carries your video, carries your control signals, and your power. If you do one that has PoE, so you're running one cable to a PTZ camera. But for other situations, it doesn't necessarily make sense. One other solution for NDI that can work really well, Skype supports NDI. You can have each of your remote callers be sent on to your switcher as an independent source using NDI. And Vmix, I believe, does the same thing with their remote solution as well. So, like I say, it has its place, but it just wouldn't work for the workflow that I have. So, TriSat Broadcast saying, hello from Kenya. I would like the costing estimate on my website. So for those who haven't seen it, maybe I should actually show it. So I have a feature on my website that actually lets you do a cost estimate for our services. And let me blow this up a little bit. So go to rate estimate, make this a little bigger. So I've got some templates set up. So basically say I'm going to do a business conference with 2+1, which means 2 cameras with operators and 1 without. Say my event will last 1 calendar day with 6 hours, and then it automatically builds out an estimate for that. So in this case, $2,600 for that. And then you can go in and tweak, customize. So you can click on, for example, switcher and director. Choose, we're going to use the trailer. That includes me. Come down to cameras and operators. Say if we want to add a 3rd camera on a tripod, choose that there. And then a corresponding crew member for that. So basically it makes it really easy for a customer to build an estimate of what services are going to cost. What I've actually found, though, is my customers don't use this. I find that I use this more than they do. Like someone calls me on the phone or emails me, I come to this in order to build quotation for services. But this is all JavaScript code. It's right there in the page. So if somebody else wants to use this, you certainly can. You have my permission to do so. But you're going to have to either know JavaScript yourself or hire a programmer who knows JavaScript in order to tweak this. The code is pretty clean. It's pretty easy to understand, so it wouldn't be hard at all for somebody to actually take this and put that on their own website. But again, I found that the actual utility of this, the usefulness of this for customers is not very high. It's very rare that they actually do this. It's far more common that they want to call and talk to me. So anyway, it's there. If you want to use it, feel free. You can just download the JavaScript code right there on that page, and you can use it for your own use. So, Omar, the monitor flickering is due to a phenomenon called Murphy's Law. Yeah, exactly. It's really funny. I mean, these monitors really do never ever flicker in any other situation. It's only when I'm doing these live streams. So it might be the fact that I'm doing 4K. That could very well be part of it. I don't normally do 4K for my customers. So, yeah. All right. Let's see. Hi, I'm about to make an instant replay with slow motion for one local company, probably using DIY server. It will have 12 4K inputs. Waiting for the monitor to come back. And there we go. 3 HyperDeck 8K Pros and ability to switch cameras in slow-mo. Yeah, and that can work. The one problem with using HyperDecks is they can't play and record at the same time. And that's going to be the same limitation that mine has. So you can't continue to record while you jump back and play which is something that most other live streaming or sorry, instant replay solutions can actually do. The most cost-effective instant replay system that I know of is the Vmix software. So you need, in order to use that, you'd need a computer that's relatively powerful, and then depending on how many channels you want, you get a Blackmagic Decklink card. You can get one up to, they have them up to 8 inputs now. But if you do 8 inputs, you wouldn't have any outputs. So you'd probably want to do like 6 inputs, 2 outputs, that kind of thing, or 4 in, 4 out, and then the software. And you're under $5,000, or right about $5,000 for all of that, which is way less than any of the hardware instant replay solutions that are out there. So, alrighty, okay. Again, waiting for the monitor to come back. I'm subscribed to your channel for a long time, and I know that you have some HyperDeck Studio Minis ready for that purpose. Instant replay. How I'll be using them? What features are over my solution? So, I mean, the main advantage is cost savings over others. But also because I'm working on my own software for that, I can do whatever I want. So if there's something that I want to do that other replay systems can't, I can just add it. So, but that I'm in kind of a unique situation that I know how to do that kind of thing. You know, I've been developing software for more than 40 years, and so it's not really a problem for me to create a software-based solution. So, all right. Almanox, have you found a stable alternative to the macro software for your ATEM? So, referring to the just macro software that I'm still using, BitFocus Companion with the Stream Deck is a decent alternative. It's not nearly as flexible, and reliability is still, depending on how you use it, can be a little bit questionable. I actually was doing some programming on in my Companion app yesterday, and I got to the point where it crashed hard, and I couldn't get it to come back up. I had to go into the JSON file, the DB file, and edit it manually in order to get it to run again. So if you're going to be running that, make sure you're backing up your configuration files. So anyway, but yeah, Stream Deck with BitFocus Companion is a great solution if you don't need anything terribly sophisticated. You know, basically this button does this one function. Like these animations that I do, you're not going to get that out of Companion. It just doesn't currently have that functionality. Although, and I intend to do a video on this if I get a chance. I did figure out a way to have Companion control just macros in order to trigger those kinds of animations, like I've demonstrated on this channel in the past, and at some point I might do a video about it, but it's really not that difficult. You basically create separate script files in just macros for each of the functions that you want to trigger, and then from Companion you can tell it to run a specific script file. You can tell you can actually control just macros from Companion. So yeah. Okay. All right, next one. Silly monitor. Okay. Do you have any experience with QPilot or LiveEdit or similar programs? I do not. So maybe some other people in the chat room can jump in and say what they're using there. So, all right. Can you suggest an audio setup for ATEM Mini Pro? For just one speaker webinar, I use Rode Wireless Go. For big events, I'm dependent on whatever output I get from the main mixing console. That depends on what your needs are. I guess it follow up here. Till now, I just provide streaming services only, but I'm planning to add all-in-one service, including audio and video, for up to 4 mics and 2 cameras. Again, it depends on what the situation is, what your budget is. Do you need wireless or whether wired can work? It's tough to just make a recommendation based on that. If you want a little more details, email me. Go to my website and click on the contact us there, and then tell me more about your situation, and I'll try and answer that. So, Jeremy, hey, have you ever used camera cranes in productions? Yes, we have a number of times. So the most common event where we've done that, it's a 4th of July celebration, and we've used jibs a couple of times. I did some church-related stuff a couple of years ago where we had a big jib in there. So yeah, yeah, they're nice to have, but they don't make sense in every situation. Usually they only make sense in a bigger environment, so if you're in a big room or outdoors. So yeah, but they can really add something special to a shoot. They're awesome for things like concerts, especially if there's a crowd once COVID is under control. But yeah. Okay. Abile, is that how you say that? Have you used any HDBaseT products and are reliable for live productions? I've toyed with them a little bit. I haven't used them in an actual production. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but Amazon invited me to be a Vine reviewer for them earlier this year, and I've gotten a couple of products in through that program that actually used HDBaseT. So I've done enough testing in order to do reviews on those, and it mostly worked. I had some situations where they didn't. I don't think that was the fault of HDBaseT. I think that was just the specific implementation that I was dealing with. But it certainly can work. It's a good way to get video from one place to another inexpensively. So for anybody who doesn't know, HDBaseT is a way of sending video over Cat5 cables. So, and it's not IP. It's not network. You can't run it through a switch. It's its own protocol. But it allows you to send video over a Cat5 cable. So I wouldn't necessarily hesitate to use them, but I would definitely spend a lot of time testing in the environment to make sure it's going to work before you actually rely on it. So, okay, Ted asking, what's your camera fax procedure? I don't know that I really have a formal one. So the fax is basically making sure everything's working. That's the procedure for making everything's working. So we don't have a hard procedure. I do have things falling over. I do have a checklist here that I keep for all my productions, and it's basically but that's basically everything. That's trailer, cameras, everything, and just basically go through each one of those things and make sure that everything is set up and working the way that it's supposed to. In terms of cameras, we make sure that we have the white balance set to every camera on every camera. We try to match them whenever we can, whenever the lighting allows us to do that. Same exposure, that way depth of field doesn't change between shots, exposure doesn't change between shots. So yeah, like I say, I don't have a hard, fast procedure for doing that. Just, I don't know, yeah, running through everything that needs to be done. So, Red More Blue, do you have any experience with Ultragrid? I do not. Fill us in a little bit more. I'm not familiar with that product. So. Okay, David asking if I've used Epiphan video hardware. I personally have not. I know that Danny here in the chat room has quite a bit, and he seems to really like it. So Danny, maybe you could weigh in a little bit more on that. So, yeah. Felipe, if I only need a few additional SDI outputs, why is that not showing? There we go. Outputs to the video mixer. Is the Blackmagic Design Mini Converter SDI distribution a good, reliable budget solution, or what would you recommend? So I have a couple of those, and they've mostly worked pretty well, but I have had a couple of situations where the outputs start flickering on them. So maybe consider stepping up something a little higher end, maybe an AJA, a product from AJA as well, especially if you don't need 4K. So AJA makes some. There's other companies that make them too, but those are kind of the companies that are making them more affordable ones. So okay, alright, when accessing the hyperdeck from FTP, the file list doesn't update when files are added. Is there a trick to request the list update? That's going to depend on what software you're using. I use FileZilla, and in that case I think it's just F5 on the keyboard on Windows in order to force a refresh. So okay, alright. Red More Blue, what is the reason you send program video back to the cameras? That allows the camera operators to see what's going on, see what cameras are actually live, and not only that, to see what kind of a shot is actually live. So if your program, the camera on program is on a tight shot, maybe the camera operator can give you a wider shot or something like that. At DJP, we actually send a multi-view back to cameras instead of just the program, and that multi-view includes cameras 1, 2, 3, and then the program feed. And so not only can they see what's live, they can also see what the other camera operators are doing. And for the most part, everybody seems to really love that. It allows them to make sure that they're not duplicating the shot that somebody else has got. I mean, if you're giving the same shot that somebody else is, the chance that your shot's going to be used is pretty low, because somebody else is already doing it. So it's nice for the camera operators to see what's going on, not just so they know when they're live, but so they can know what other shots are being composed by the other camera operators. So you can, so they can get something different, get something a little bit, get some variety in the shots. So, yeah. Okay, next one. Waiting for monitor. Okay. Hello from Australia. Thanks to the Z150ZR bot are working well for me. Second gig and third day. Looking forward to becoming a member when funds become available. Awesome. Very much appreciate that. So yeah. I'm glad we can help. And at any time you guys are in a position to help the channel with membership, that's awesome. So. Okay. Doug Pogue asking, can you explain the purpose of ref in and when you need to use it? So basically, I've been promising a video about this for a long time and I've never done it. So the ref in is a place, it's an input on a lot of video equipment to, they call Genlock, the cameras. So back in the days of standard definition analog video, in order to switch between multiple video sources, all of them had to be in sync. So each camera, all the cameras had to start drawing the top of the frame and draw each line in parallel, all at the same time. With the move to digital switchers in high definition, especially in the last few years, switchers have what they call frame syncs built in, and so they're able to buffer any input so that internally it can sync them up. Because when you just turn two cameras on, turn camera A, camera B on at the same time, they're not outputting the top of the frame simultaneously. And in order to switch between those, at least one of them has to be buffered so that when you switch from one camera to the other, it can actually switch. It can actually just start displaying the image from the second camera at the appropriate time. What reference in, what Genlock allows you to do is to synchronize those cameras so that they are all sending you the same portion of the picture at the same time to get them all in sync. So in order to make that work, you need some sort of signal generator. Back in the day, we used to use black burst generators in order to do that. These days, you can still use black burst generators, but you basically get a signal generator that generates a signal that tells each camera, it's like, okay, you need to start drawing the top of your frame right now. You need to start drawing line 1 of your picture right now. And what the big advantage you get from that is you don't have the delay that's associated with the frame sync on your switcher. So a lot of the switchers we use, the hardware-based switchers that we use today that have frame syncs, the maximum delay from input to output is 1 frame. But if you have the cameras synchronized using Genlock, they can basically be next to zero delay from input to output. And so that gives you just a little bit quicker output, but it's not very common that we actually need that anymore. Especially if we're doing a live stream, who cares if the signal is delayed by a half of a frame? So, yeah, I mean, it's a nice to have. It's not a need in most situations. So I've never actually used it with my modern setup. I did use it back in the day with analog, but I have not used it since I made the switch to digital, fully digital, with HD. So my trailer, all the equipment supports reference in. I don't have any of them connected. So, yeah, it's just not necessary. So, okay, Bruno, is it possible to share the dimensions of your trailer? I'd like to do one here in Portugal. I saw the videos of construction, but I really want to know the dimensions. So, interior dimensions, lengthwise, 16 feet. What's that? About 5 meters, isn't that roughly? 7 feet wide, so like a little over 2, and then 7 feet tall. That said, this front monitor wall, the trailer actually has a V-nose on it, so it's an angle. There's about 2 feet in front of this front wall. So the actual, along the center line of the trailer, it's more like 18 feet from the back doors to the front V-nose. And then from the back, very back of the trailer to the tongue, the front of the tongue is about 20 feet. Which, happens to correspond almost exactly with the standard size of a parking space here in the U.S. So I can park this trailer in a standard U.S. parking space, and it fits. I've done that many times. Or it's something a little bigger, it wouldn't. It'd stick out in some direction. Either you're taking up 2 parking spaces if it's wider, or you're sticking out into the road, basically. So, yeah. Okay, Omar, I think the tool might be technical for customers. I think you're probably referring to my website and the quotation feature that I have on there. And it's definitely technical, but that's kind of why, so at the top it has these predefined templates. So you choose one of those and go with it. So, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's definitely, it's comprehensive, you know, it's basically everything. What are the charges for basically everything? So, yeah. Okay, so next one. Curtis, what is the latency using fiber cable versus SDI, or is it comparable? So, the fiber is actually an SDI signal. So it's just taking SDI, the same SDI signal that's on a copper cable, converting it to light, and sending it down the way. So, effectively 0 additional latency. So, you're not having to wait for any sort of video encoding or anything like that. It's the exact same signal, 100% the same quality, because it is the same signal. You know, it's just optical instead of electrical. So, yeah. Okay. Okay. Do you have any microphone recommendations for capturing natural sports audio, i.e., tennis ball hitting the racket? That's good. Oh, geez, that's going to vary a lot based on the situation. For that volleyball tournament, I had some cardioid mics, Rode NT5s, set up to capture most of the court, but then I took, this is a stereo mic from Sony, it's what model is this, ECM MS957. I had this one set up right at the net. Like I say, it's stereo, so I was capturing audio from the players near the net, and it happens to be a mid-side and MS mic, so it has a element that's shooting straight out the end, and that was capturing the sound of the net. So anytime the ball would hit the net or a player or whatever, we'd capture that on this. But again, it depends on the situation. There's so many different scenarios that you need to worry about when you're talking about sports. So different directional patterns, different types, whether you're talking dynamic or condenser, yeah, cardioid, omni. It's hard to make just a general recommendation. A good place to start, though, would be like a pair of Rode NT5s. Those are useful for a lot of situations. Something a little less expensive. The Behringer B5s, they're similar but less money. Or the Octava MK012. So, yeah. A lot of different options out there. You just got to figure out if you need directionality, or what type of directionality you need, how close you're going to get the microphone to where the sound is coming from, to the source. So, you know, shotgun mic can make sense. You see on the sidelines in sports, they use parabolic mics in a lot of situations. So, yeah, just a lot of variety. Just need to decide what specifically you want to pick up, where is the microphone going to be in proximity to that, and then choose a type based on that. So, Danny answering about the Epiphan encoders. I'm big on Epiphan encoders, and they have gone hardcore with supported SRT and their Pearl line, which now starts at about the same price as the Cherek VDU. So, there you go. Okay, Duraco. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Do you still recommend the Sony SRG 300 SE PTZ cameras, or is there any newer cameras? So I was actually just shopping around a little bit, maybe hoping to update that. So there's a newer one, SRG X400. It actually has a 4K option, and it's about the same amount of money, a little bit more, but it's similar amount of money, and it has a bigger sensor, which means it probably has much better low light. It looks like a pretty decent option. The one downside that it has is its motion is not as slow as the 300 SE. The 300 SE is a bit of an anomaly. I haven't seen any other cameras that can go down to 0.1 degree per second like that one can. So if you want really slow motion, the 300 SE is about your only choice. The X400 does 0.5 degrees per second at its slowest, so it's 5 times faster, which if you're zoomed in, 0.5 degrees per second can actually be pretty fast. I'm not sure that you would necessarily want to use that as part of a live shot. It's much more appropriate for repositioning the camera between shots. So, yeah, the 300 SE, it produces a good picture if you have a lot of light, but in most indoor situations, the picture can get a little bit grainy and desaturated. So, yeah. Okay. Ted, what's your preferred way to do sports score bugs? Graphics score bugs. I have my own software that I use for that. It's a little piece of software. I call it Score, and that's what I used for the volleyball tournament a couple weeks ago. And I just keep enhancing it based on whatever event I happen to be doing. So for this volleyball thing, I added some new stuff that I didn't have before. I do a brief mention of it in the behind-the-scenes video that I shot during that. So members that are at the $10 level will be able to see that video. So Curtis is saying, check out Central Control. It's fantastic. I'll have to take a look at that. Yeah. So thanks for the recommendation. Okay. All right. Carlos, do you use Blackmagic Decklink monitor cards? If so, what's your use case for them? I actually use them quite a bit. So here in the trailer, I've got one in my server, and when we're doing video editing here in the trailer, it becomes essentially live output. So you see whatever. You see the real video coming directly out of Premiere. But it's also used for, I think I've mentioned this on my channel a few times, but when we need to do playback of video during an event, that's a great way to do it. I actually play directly out of Premiere most of the time. I mean, there's times that I use my HyperDeck for video playback, but especially when we need to be capturing something and editing it on the spot, that's an absolute great way to do it. So you create your Premiere timeline, drop your video in there, make sure your timeline settings are the same as your switcher, so 1080p, 60 or whatever. And then you can just play it right directly out of the timeline. And that comes out of the Decklink on an SDI output, so that can go directly into your switcher. No rendering or anything. It's a great way to handle playback. Again, also great for editing, because you know the signal coming out of that hasn't gone through any sort of distortion or whatever by going through like a traditional HDMI output out of a graphics card. So you're getting the native signal exactly as it exists on the timeline. So, alright. Ivan, how do you send 4K over fiber? Are you using 2 strands with camera converter for return signal and intercom, or 1 for 4K signal with camera over a MIDI converter to another mini or studio converter? I'm gonna have to do a video on this one, and it's on my to-do list. It's like the very top of my to-do list, actually. Fiber can carry 4K. The limitation I have is the Blackmagic camera converter box, the little silver box. They don't have a 4K version of that. And so if I need to do live 4K, I have to send the video over a separate fiber. And I have one right here actually. This is the mini converter optical fiber 12G from Blackmagic. I don't know that I have. Oh yeah, I do have a 6 gig module in there. So this can actually do 4K over fiber. So you just need the right converter in order to make it happen. Unfortunately, there is no camera converter that actually has 4K support, and so I have to do multiple in parallel. So I'll do one for the 4K video from the camera, and then do another one that has intercom and return video. So not ideal, and I don't think I've ever had a customer actually do it. I've only ever done it in a scenario where I'm just testing it or doing a demonstration of the capabilities of the trailer. So, yeah. Alright, Bardic College. I need to find a really good titling software for software and or hardware. What are your recommendations? For what it's worth, I'm researching the titler broadcast live with Fusion, turnkey appliance. I'm not the right person to ask that question, because I just use my own software that I wrote. Whenever I need to do titles, I just use my own software. And if it doesn't do what I need it to do, I just add the capability. So I haven't spent much time researching that. I'm not the right person to answer that question. So maybe some other people can weigh in the chat. So go ahead. I'm looking for a mixer for my ATEM Mini Pro. My first add mixer to be flexible enough for whatever output I get from existing audio setup at a venue. We'll just get a cheap little Behringer if you're just wanting to add some additional channels. So Yeah, just get one of the little Behringers. They're inexpensive. They work well enough. Yeah. Okay. All right. When are you going to get your hands on the YoloBox live and do a real-world testing using it? They've reached out to me a number of times, and I have thus far not responded. I probably need to get that in and test it. It's something that I think a fair number of people who watch the channel would be interested in. But it doesn't make sense for my particular workflow, and that's why I haven't pursued that. But I could certainly bring one in and test it for the benefit of the people who watch the channel. So I know they would provide one to me. Like they've reached out to me on several occasions. So Hennis, I'm not sure the right pronunciation on that. How do you match all the white balance from all the cameras at an event if they're all different locations with different light angles? Well, it can be a little bit of a challenge, but most of the situations we work in, the lighting is controlled, and so we can usually use the same white balance settings. But if nothing else, I have a big 2 foot by 3 foot foam core board that I use, and go stand out in front of the cameras, hold that up, and then just manually white balance off of that in situations where the color of the lighting changes from different angles. So, but it can be a challenge if you're, like the volleyball tournament we shot a few weeks ago. We had some sunlight coming through the windows, and depending on which angle you were at, that could affect the camera more than it did from other angles. So yeah, we started out with all the cameras set at, I think, 4800 Kelvin, and then we just tweaked as needed in order to make them look right. So we use the scopes quite a bit, the vector scope. So you do a white card on a vector scope, and if there's any color tint to it, the center point actually moves around. So you can kind of measure and line things up that way. Okay, Leopold. What do you use for comms? Headphones and walkie. I've got a whole video about that here on the channel, but Intercom is mostly based on Blackmagic studio converters and camera converters. The same system that gets me fiber to and from cameras also carries my intercom audio. I have that going into a separate audio mixer whose purpose is just intercom. But in addition to that, I also have my two-way radios, GMRS units from Midland tied into that. I don't know if you can see it. There's a two-way radio here, and I have another one of these in the back of the trailer wired into the intercom. So anybody talking on the radios, that audio goes into the intercom as well. Again, go watch that video because I go into extreme detail about that. You recommend having SPG and GPS for syncing an OB van, or should I self-sync? I don't see any need to do that kind of fancy syncing. You just sync yourself. You should be good to go. Glenn asking, do you use CCUs in your productions? I do not. I don't have any cameras that actually support CCUs. Mostly it's a budget thing. I would love to. My company hasn't grown enough, and I'm not getting events that are big enough in order to justify the cost of having that level of equipment. So the Sony Z150 cameras that I use put out a pretty darn good image, and that's worked really well. So I mean, that means the camera operators have to do their own exposure, their own white balance, etc. But it hasn't really been much of a problem so far. P10 designs, what do you recommend for instant replay, like for sports? Try Vmix. Vmix has a pretty decent solution there. You have to build a decent computer, but it's relatively affordable compared to some of the other solutions out there. I mean, if you go with like high-end stuff that like ESPN uses, you're talking $100,000 to start before you even get any storage or input outputs in for your cameras or whatever. But in Vmix you can build a solution for $5,000 or $6,000. So yeah. Okay, Aaron, how do you handle vibration PCs? I'm working on a rolling rack, but I'm scared to put my rack mount PC in it, which kind of defeats the purpose. Well, there are a lot of racks out there that are shock mounted, so that'd be a good place to start. Here in the trailer, my entire rack in the back is on rubber isolators all the way around, and so if there is any vibration driving down the road, it's pretty well isolated. But I have found that the trailer suspension works really well, And at this point, when I'm moving the trailer, I don't even bother to like Velcro these keyboards down or anything like that, because they just don't move. Nothing in the trailer moves around when I'm transporting it. So yeah, definitely gotten a little bit more lax in how much preparation I do before I take the trailer somewhere, because I'm finding that I don't need to strap things down the way that I used to. But yeah, in terms of a rack, just start with one of the shock mount racks that are out there. There's tons of them. So okay, Amari asking, is the ATEM sending an SDI signal to the cameras? Is that used to sync for those cameras? No, that is not. That's just a return video signal. So if you're going to do sync, you need a separate signal for that. It's a very simple signal. It's something that you can distribute using a very inexpensive video distribution amplifier, and it's done over SDI. On the lower end, if you get into the higher end, it's another signal that gets sent over a fiber bundle, but it's not something included in the Blackmagic fiber setup. That's just 2 video sources, the camera feed and then the return feed, and that's it. So, but yeah. Okay. Almanox, Genlock is very relevant when doing iMag. To a point, yeah, because you're really only saving up to a frame, in most cases, on average, a half a frame. So the biggest thing you can do when you're doing iMag to reduce the latency is to shoot at 60 frames per second. That cuts your total delay time in half compared to 30 frames per second. So if you want to reduce the latency from camera to projector, one way to do it is just set your camera to 60 frames per second. So, alright, did COVID affect the job? Are you working at the moment? I already kind of answered this. I'm still doing events, doing more virtual events than I've ever done before. That's kind of a new thing, but we're still working. We're still doing events fairly regularly. So, Tobias, what do you use for playing out graphics and making graphics? Playout. Very often, well, I've got several different solutions. I have videos about most of these things. I use a hyperdeck for video very often for things that I can prepare ahead of time. I have my own custom software that I wrote for producing graphics live. Like, for example, if I want to do a lower third, I just type in the name, hit a key, and it generates it. So I've got that. For making graphics, again, the same software. I also use Photoshop quite a bit for that. And for higher end events where we want to have something a little more sophisticated, then we get into After Effects and then pre-rendering some graphics with an alpha channel and play those out using the hyperdeck. And again, I have a video about doing that here on the channel, so go back just a few months and we'll talk about that. Felipe saying that Sony sRG X400, Sony just released an update to slow down the PTZ. Okay, I hadn't heard that. So I was actually just reading the technical documentation on that camera a couple days ago, and there was no mention of that. So maybe that must be something new that I'm not familiar with. So, hey, what's the cheapest mobile quick setup system? Kind of need to know your requirements, what you're looking for. But ATEM Mini can be quick and easy. NewTek makes the TriCaster Mini, I think is what they call it. A little tiny all-in-one box, has a monitor and everything in it. So yeah, I mean, it's tough to know what's going to work for you without knowing your requirements. Wade, what are your thoughts on the Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K? Not a fan. Most of the Blackmagic cameras have relatively poor low light performance, and that definitely includes the Micro Studio cameras, especially because those use Micro Four Thirds lenses. And in terms of availability of lenses that are fast and offer smooth electronic zoom, your options are almost none, almost zero. There aren't very many. And so, in reality, if you want to use those cameras in a real situation and have good zoom, you're adapting them to a B mount. In which case, it would probably just make more sense to go with like the Ursa Broadcast or a used Sony or something like that. So the studio cameras, I mean, the full studio camera is nice because it has a nice big screen on the back, it has intercom built in, a lot of cool things that are going on there, fiber support built directly in there. But in terms of the image quality, I just find that it isn't quite there, and you can get a better image going a different route. So again, I use Sony cameras mostly. because the image quality can be absolutely fantastic. What do you guys think of the image quality of this video? I mean, this is a Sony Z150, so $3,000 camera. Yeah, so. Okay, Ivan, what kind of patch panel and connector are you using on the breakout box? Do you have links for them on your URL shortener? The patch panel itself is Middle Atlantic Uni 1, UNI-1. And then the actual connectors are just Neutrik D style connectors, nothing fancy. You can get those. I get them mostly through MarkerTech. Pretty inexpensive, and just get the connectors that I need. The Neutrik D style is a standard. You find all sorts of manufacturers make them, not just Neutrik. The fiber ones that I use, I forget where I got those. Probably MarkerTech as well, but yeah. Okay. Paul, impromptu? Hey Doug. Yeah, totally impromptu. I wasn't planning. I'm planning on doing this when I got up this morning, but I was in the trailer for some church-related stuff, and I said, hey, I might as well do a live stream. So, all right, Soundman, you need to check out Resi for streaming. It's great for unpredictable internet. So, I use the Teradek Video Go and Pro that I use can support many internet connections. And I have at times used as many as 6 internet connections coming out of one of those. And so I have a solution that actually works really well for me. It does the encoding and streaming and bonding all in one. So yeah, but Resi would probably be right for a lot of other people. Okay. Alright. I'm gonna start speeding up here a little bit. Been going over an hour already. Did you ever use ROI, region of interest, in your productions? If so, where can I learn about how to do it? It's something I've really wanted to do. I just haven't found the right piece of equipment to make that happen. Okay, so for anybody who's not familiar with this, ROI allows you to zoom in, crop in on another video source to produce another virtual source. So for example, you have a 4K camera that's getting a wide shot. You can use an ROI feature to zoom in and make an HD shot out of that, or multiple HD shots. Data Video has a pretty cool product that does that. I forget the name of it, but they've got a product that will take 2 4K ins and then produce up to 8 HD outputs, and it's relatively affordable. So that'd be a decent solution. The big problem with that is once you start cropping in on a video feed, the quality drops pretty dramatically, even when you have a nice camera. So if you're okay with some quality loss, then ROI can help, but you also might find that having a PTZ camera might be a better solution. That gives you full quality when you zoom in, when you crop, essentially, right? So, yeah. Okay. Silly monitor, flickering all over the place. Paul talking about my trailer, how dual axle really does help. It helps a lot with the trailer. It just dampens things out quite a bit. Yeah. Philan, whatever. I've only used the EVS for replay. Yeah, the EVS is the one I was talking about earlier. Yeah, like basically talking $100,000 to start with an EVS solution. They're awesome. You can do a lot of cool things with them, and you get continuous recording for all your cameras and whatever. But yeah. Okay, Flash TV Info. Hi, best regards. I have a question. Which camera do you recommend for live broadcast? $16,000 budget for cameras. Is that per camera, or is that just for one camera? I think that's going to be a hard question to answer again. Like, there's so many things that go into that. Like, are you going to be near the subject? You're going to be far away. Is it going to be in a lit situation? Do you need to change lenses? Do you need to consider CCU? Yeah, there's just a lot of things that go into that. What type of look do you want? Do you want something that's more crisp and more broadcast-like, something that's more forgiving on focus, or you want a more cinematic look where you're talking shallow depth of field? Well, there's just a lot of questions have to be answered before you can make a recommendation on that. Okay, Doug, do you have a spreadsheet with the wattage of all the equipment in the trailer? Hard to believe it's less than 1,600 watts. Well, when I designed the trailer, I did. I have not really kept it up to date, but I haven't added much by the way of devices that consume power. So as I was designing the trailer, I had a spreadsheet. I had one column for the cost, monetary cost, and another column for the power draw. And so I needed to make sure, the goal was to make sure that all the electronic equipment in the trailer would draw less current than a standard household outlet provides here in the US. So here in the US we're 120 volts. Most outlets are 15 amp. 20 amp is not uncommon, but 15 amp is by far the most common. So 220 volts times 15 amps gives you up to 1800 watts, and I needed to be under that. And as I was designing the trailer, I kept that number underneath that total. I have a device called a kilowatt that actually measures power draw, and most of the time, for a very typical situation we have here in the trailer, drawing right at 1000 watts. So yeah, also the my battery backup system keeps track of current usage as well, so I can see what's going on with that. It does vary some based on how much equipment we need to have turned on, and also how much sunlight we're getting, because I have solar. I have up to 400 watts of solar panels on the roof, and those will power the 12-volt equipment here in the trailer, which is actually quite a bit. So while the trailer is running, it's typically drawing about 20 amps of 12-volt power, and almost all of that can be provided by solar in the middle of the day. So, but that's included in that 1600 watt total, or 1200 watt total, or 1000 watt total, or whatever. So in the middle of the day, that total that we're drawing from a venue actually goes down, because we're actually supplementing it with solar. So, all right, Jonathan, what would you recommend, fiber versus Cat 6? Depends on your requirements. Fiber is much more affordable than it used to be. It is more delicate than Cat 6, but it can go a lot farther. So if you need to run, Cat 6 maxes out at 100 meters. If you need to go farther than that, fiber is your only option. But fiber actually is cheaper than Cat 6 cable. So, yeah. Alright, how have you managed the loss of equipment on location? I hope it's never happened, but just curious. I've been really lucky about that. I mean, I make sure that all my stuff at least has my company initials on it, so everything says DJP and or has an asset label and or some sort of identifying marking, so that it's very clear that my stuff is my stuff. I also use my Crew Access website when I'm planning events, and I have checklists that talk about the checklist. Basically say this is all the equipment that we're using, and then I can use the website actually has separate versions of that checklist for testing equipment, for loading equipment, for transport, loading the equipment in on site, testing it. It's got all these different checklists, and then I can just pull up one of those checklists and say, yes, I've got this camera, yes, I've got this camera cable bin, and whatever. And within each one of those things, it breaks it into the individual components within the case as well. So like for the camera, there's one for the camera itself, there's one for the SD cards that are in there. So it's very, very easy for me to use my website in order to keep track of the equipment and use it. But at the same time, I've got good crews. You know, these people know that it's just the right thing to do to keep track of equipment, keep things bundled together so you're not spreading things out too much. But we're just really careful about it. I haven't lost anything of any real value. I've had a walkie-talkie go missing before. Cables disappear, video adapters go disappear, but I haven't had anything big disappear. Another thing that I have done, I haven't really used it much recently, but I put some little tags on my cameras. I use it's called the Tracker, T-R-A-C-K-R. These little wireless Bluetooth tags, and I put those on the cameras, and then when it's time to leave, I can pull my phone out, launch the app, and it'll say, yes, all your cameras are in close proximity. I had to do that once because I accidentally left one of my PTZs behind at a venue. It didn't get stolen, it was just someone forgot to load it. So I invested in those tracker tags for all the cameras, and so I can just pull out my phone and see if everything has actually been loaded into the trailer. So, all right, I'm gonna have to start wrapping things up here. Cyberblast, what is the best option to run video cable inside building walls of a church? Camera to streaming room is about 150 to 200 feet. We want to run 1080p 30 video, SDI versus fiber versus Cat 6. If you're running in the walls, I would suggest going with Quad Shield RG6. That'll take care of your SDI, and it can be used for other things as well. Fiber, you can run it in walls, but it's a little harder to work with. Fiber has a minimum bend radius. It doesn't like being pulled across sharp edges like you might find in and snaking through a wall. Fiber would be ideal, but in terms of signal capability or whatever. But Cat 6 I wouldn't bother with, not for video. But yeah, SDI over RG6 would be. Okay, so FBG Live. Have you ever had HDMI video issues with ATEM camera converters? I have not, actually. Well, I take that back. I have had an issue on the output of a camera converter, on the HDMI output. The SDI output worked fine in that case, so I just ran a converter. But it's one of my particular converters, and I have that one marked now to know not to use that HDMI output. If the device was still under warranty, I'd have Blackmagic replace it, but it's long past warranty at this point. I just use it on SDI most of the time. You know, I have SDI on some of my monitors, and so I just use that. But in terms of HDMI from camera into the trailer, I don't think I've ever had flickering issues, unless there's a problem with the fiber. Fiber can be a little intermittent if it's bent too tightly, and or the connectors have gotten dirty or otherwise damaged. So see if the problem is with the cable. The other thing is, if you're having some flickering issues, see if you can clean out the SFPs. Use a little blast of, well, like the rocket style air blowers. You don't want to use the spray, can spray. Just make sure that there's no dust on the inside the SFP. So I think that actually gets us just about current. Is there any overview of your website with checklists and tracker thing? No, I haven't taken a lot of time to do that because there's a free version of the site available. So if you want to try the site, just sign up for the free version. And if you want to see all the features, you can sign up for the paid one and then cancel after a month if you want. I'm one of these people that absolutely hates websites that you have to make a phone call or email somebody to cancel. So I made sure it was really easy to cancel on my site. You just basically go up to admin, subscription, and then say cancel. It's literally like 4 total clicks once you're logged in. Very easy to do. But most of the features of the site are available in the free version. The checklists I don't think are available in the free one. I think that requires a higher end edition. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's been a while since I determined which features were in which edition. But again, you can play with most of the site in the free version and see if it's going to meet your needs there. But the checklist is a cool feature there that I use quite a bit for making sure that I have all the equipment that I need. I've got an event going on tomorrow, and I got an email this morning basically saying, here's the equipment you need for tomorrow. And so at some point today, I'm going to go through the list and make sure I get everything loaded up. So it's an event we're not using the trailer for, so I'm going to have to load everything in my truck. But having the checklist, that has saved me so many times. Like if I have to go off the top of my head and remembering what I need, inevitably there's something I forget. It's usually something really important, like a camera, or a cable to connect a camera or something like that, or a power strip. Inevitably, if I don't have my checklist, I will forget to bring something. So anyway, that is one of the features of the site. So it's really easy to use too. Like once you've got your equipment set up in there, when you go to plan an event, you say you can basically say I need this, and this, and there's a cool search feature in there. So you type a camera, and then it limits the list of displayed equipment to just cameras, and then you just click on each one. Say I want this, I want this, I want this, and then it shows up in the list. And then the morning before an event. The day before, on the morning of the day before an event, you get a thing in your email say, "Here's your checklist for loading." So, and then it's actually it's designed specifically for use on a smartphone, so the interface is very easy to use. When it comes time to use the checklist, you literally just have checkboxes across the left, like across the left side of the window. You say, "Yes, I've got this. Yes, I've got this. Yes, I've got this," and it keeps track of who checked the box, when they did it, and it also records the GPS location of where they did it. So if you have somebody that's helping you and they say they loaded something in and the GPS location doesn't match where that item is, you know that they didn't actually do it the way they were supposed to. So anyway. Okay, alright. I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up, but thanks guys for watching. There are more videos coming. I have 4 videos that I've already shot that haven't been edited yet. It's kind of, again, just waiting. make sure Wit gets settled in, make sure she actually has time to do editing. But when I need to, I'm doing some of the editing myself. The last few videos that I've released, I've done the editing on those myself. But I have 4 additional videos that have already been shot. I'll be doing a handful more. I've got a huge project coming up that involves Dante. I don't want to say much more than that. Most of the equipment for that's arriving tomorrow. I'll be doing a video about that fairly shortly. So I get a lot of cool things that are happening. My list of videos that I'm going to be making just keeps getting longer and longer. I'm getting further and further behind. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff still coming. So, but if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I try to do video-related content once a week. Again, pending availability. We've always got events going on. And when I've got a big event, I just don't have time to produce a video. But again, please consider subscribing to the channel. I've mentioned my website that I've created, crewaxis.com, CREWAXIS. I built the site initially for me in order to help me run my business, and then after running it for about a year and a half, I decided to open it up, make it available for other people as well. And that's available, and there, as mentioned, is a free version available, so you can kind of get a feel for what the site's all about without even having to give us a credit card number. You can get in there and use it you can use the free version for as long as you want. I don't care. Just use it for the rest of eternity. It's fine by me. But there are paid subscriptions that offer more features, allow more users to be logged in, allow you to keep track of more equipment, those kinds of things. So, but that's very helpful if you do sign up for those paid plans on there as well. So, yeah, I don't know exactly when my next video is coming, but should be before too long. Again, we already have some shot and ready to go. Just needs a little bit of editing. So, anyway, that's gonna do it for now, I think, and we'll see you guys whenever the next video happens. Be another QA, at least one more Q&A before the end of the year. We'll do one in December for sure. So, anyway, thanks everyone. We'll talk to you later.